Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. I hope everything is working now. Yeah, good. Thumbs up from Justice on both the defunct Skype network for some reason, which still exists on my phone, but also thank you to, the transition to Microsoft Teams. It seems to be working. I just have to work out the best way to see it. But we had audio problems this morning. Did it come in weird for you, like right in the middle of the introduction? Yeah, well, not here. I heard everything, but it did sound kind of muffled. I was wondering why. Had somebody turned down the volume on my headset or something here? But as it turns out, I don't know. Everything worked out. Everything started up as it was supposed to. But I wonder whether, like, the exit of Skype, the fact that it doesn't work when it's turned on normally automatically by my setup, has something to do with it. I'll have to eliminate it or turn it off today. But usually I go through a pre-show checklist, and I did, and all of the things that trigger or warrant additional action, weren't present today. But as soon as I heard that muffled sound and got a note, thank you, Justice, for giving me the sound check there and said, hey, the stream is running, but there's no audio coming through. I had a sneaking suspicion what the problem might be. There was no real reason for it to be that problem, but sometimes the soundboard, I don't know what you would call it, the soundboard square on my what do you call it, audio hijack needs an extra kick in the butt. Turn it off, turn it back on again. You know how computers work. Okay. So good. At least we got the live stream audio on before I started saying these valuable comments. And now you haven't missed out on any of that. Okay, and in post-production, we can fix it so that the sound sounds better. All right, I think so. I think there'll be a little hiccup in there. Maybe you'll hear it. How exciting. Okay, time for yet another show. Greg Dworkin has already lined up his Rafto stories, and he's even given me a game plan, which is rather amazing. I say we blow it up and go crazy in several different directions. Yesterday, Oval Office meeting with the new Canadian Prime Minister, shambolic disaster, more or less, as predicted. But we go on, we march on, because everybody knew that Trump would, do and say dumb things, and it was the job of the Canadian Prime Minister to ignore those dumb things. Not supposed to be the job of the American press to ignore those dumb things. They didn't ignore them. They reported them dutifully, but you know how it is. They're not somehow permitted, not only in their own minds with their own system of ethics, but also because Donald Trump would probably sick his mob on their families if they reported, not only the dumb things that he said, but with the commentary that this is widely accepted to be dumb and stupid. He went back to his famous department store metaphor, I guess, although he doesn't think of it as a metaphor. He thinks it's a direct a comparison here, a direct analogy to being a department store, which doesn't really work as an explanation, but I don't mind when Donald Trump keeps the conversations about being about Donald Trump and department stores, because, that's actually bad news for Donald Trump to spend his time talking about department stores. The lesson of his life for us should be, don't go into department stores. If Donald Trump is in there, he may sexually assault you. It's almost a guarantee at this point. But if that's the example he wants to use, and remind everybody that, he's a rapist, and the department stores were where he perpetrated some of his greatest crimes, I guess that's his prerogative. The example doesn't work, of course. And if you haven't heard it, long story short there is, he thinks of the United States, one, as his personality, and two, as a giant luxury department store. It has to be a luxury one. Can't be a crappy department store. And all the rest of the countries in the world want to get in to shop, except actually all the rest of the countries in the world want to get their products on the shelves for Americans to shop for. So the whole thing falls apart immediately, but something department store.
Well, basically, he wants you to shop at Neiman
know
Marcus and not Fortunoff's.
I guess, yeah. Also, by the way, other people pointing out, an interesting example also as like 90% of the department stores in the country, in the history of the country, have gone under. They don't fare well, department stores, not in the modern context. But yeah.
Well, you can go from the general, which doesn't work for him, to the specific, which also doesn't work for him, as you pointed out. Department stores, oh yeah, rapist, I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting too. By the way, I did see somewhere, I didn't have to go and grab it. While we're talking about organized thoughts, I guess Republicans are urging him to please stop talking about the dolls, sir. I'm not really sure why that's bothering them, except that I guess they don't want to talk about
because they sell dolls. They sell nested dolls.
I guess maybe
they want you to have 30 or more.
And I saw an interesting sort of like, I don't know what you would call it, critical gender studies version, or you don't even need to be a gender studies person to understand it. It was interesting that someone observed, and I think, hey, maybe that's right. It's dolls, and he loves going back to the dolls story, and it's largely, in this person's view, well, that's supposed to mean that it's like it's feminizing the issue, and it's like it's feminine to be worried about shortage. Like the girls will be worried about their dolls.
Yeah, you need to be worried about stealing from somebody else. That's a manly thing to do.
Exactly. Pencils doesn't really excite the boys either, but
they'll gather, you hunt.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I don't know. Everything's weird. You have collected and organized thoughts about that. I don't. But I'll just use yours.
Don't
as
accuse me of being organized here. I will say this,
yes,
and this is just a parenthetical, but I found it amusing.
Okay.
So what we cover here on the show.
What do we cover on the show?
Stories.
Yes.
Big stories.
Ooh.
And stories that interest us. And often they're not the same thing. They're three different categories. Sometimes the story's so big it's like one thing.
Yes.
But usually it's like three different things, and which one we pick and choose depends upon which one of us is speaking at any given moment.
Yeah.
And I do my best to not let you speak in the first hour. So,
Right. Oh, I forgot to give you a fanfare today.
Yeah. Fanfare. Da-da-da-da.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you for providing it.
I also was mildly amused, by reading somebody who was very critical of podcasts. And
Me too.
I think find it amusing too. Yeah. And the reason that they hate them is because they're researched and they're well thought out and they're nuanced.
We're safe.
And therefore, because of that, they're about 3.5 weeks old, really stale and boring.
This makes us sound good.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way. I don't know.
I mean, let's just say we don't do that.
Yeah, right. Oh, we just go right to it. Oh, I just heard something on Blue Sky podcast.
Yeah. and people, longtime listeners will understand this. This whole podcast, not David's conception of it, but my addition to it, it really all evolved out of David and I having breakfast at various and sundry conferences. And this is how we speak to each other. And it's been true for, 15 years now or whatever.
Right. Did you see that thing today? Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of it?
I lost it. I can't find it anymore.
Let me interrupt you while you tell me what you think of it so I can tell you what you think of it.
Yeah, basically. And essentially it got to, this sort of recognizes the problem with I guess, this person's worry about well-researched podcasts. I moved into it mostly because I was like, damn it, I don't want to go find that link. I want to talk about it now, and then I'll go get the link after. I don't have it in my fingertips, but I'll get it.
I'm a blogger, so I need the link.
Right.
But I'm doing a podcast, so I don't want it now.
I totally saw all these things. But, I don't want to write. I don't want to craft it. I just want to talk about it immediately.
Been there, done that. I just want to talk about it now.
Yeah. Okay.
So I just thought that was all interesting. Mm-hmm. And it's important. It actually is a lead-in to the topic that I want to talk about. Today's Pundit Roundup.
Yes.
Is Trump is losing disengaged voters and some Republicans on some issues.
Oh, good.
Like Tom Tillis said he's not voting for Ed Martin to be DA.
Yeah, I hope that lasts.
Like he's awful.
He is a freak.
Hopefully that, when we have more on that. I have Joyce Vance talking about it. I have why Ed Martin is awful. comparing Biden to Hitler wasn't a great move because actually the comparison is to Trump.
Much older.
But,
much older than Hitler.
But,
yeah.
The idea that Trump is losing disengaged voter really is worth exploring. So this is from a piece by G. Elliott Morris, and I'm going to send you a couple of pictures which are of interest to you because your listeners can't see it. We're on a podcast.
Right.
But nonetheless, they're interesting, and so I'm going to
send
it to you as soon as I figure out the right screen to put them in. Okay. Here we go. It's going to be in the team chat. And what the picture is kind of a scatter plot.
Oh, boy. He did it on a whiteboard.
Voters.
By hand.
Blue voters and red voters done by hand. But what G. Elliott Morris is doing is showing how voter loyalty, if you will, voting habit evolved from 2020 to 2024. In 2020, the liberals voted for Biden and the conservatives voted for Trump.
Yeah.
And we won.
Right.
But in 2024, you can't just divide it between liberal and conservative. You also have to look at whether or not, and we've talked about this on the show, voters are engaged or disengaged. And the scatter plot clearly shows, as his data does, that the more engaged you are, the more likely you were going to vote for Harris. In fact, Harris won the engaged voters, the ones that read the New York Times and listen to news and such. She won them by 6 points.
Okay.
Unfortunately, she also lost disengaged voters by 16 or something like that. And what the scatter plot shows is that if you're liberal, but a disengaged voter, you were just as likely to vote for Trump as for Harris. Whereas if you were liberal engaged voters, there are no Trump voters.
Was this engagement as defined by, do you know who these two candidates are?
Something like that.
Disengaged?
Yeah, but I mean, so the whole idea of disengaged voters is important.
Yeah.
And these are not the West Virginia diner voters who have a clear opinion of Trump and other things. They are not disengaged voters. And that's why it's so useless talking to them, because it didn't give you any really good insight. Yeah. They are engaged. They're engaged conservative style.
Yes.
And they're not the same thing as disengaged voters. They're not median voters. They're not swing voters. They're none of those things. And that's why everybody's sick and tired of talking to them.
Yeah. Disengaged from reality, but engaged in conspiracy theory.
So G. Elliott Morris talks about the truly disengaged voters and say, what about them? Well, their job approval rating is down. Trump's job approval rating with them is down 33 points since he was elected. From a net positive to now the most net negative group that the pollsters differentiate. He has lost, in effect, the American public.
Those guys again.
Disengaged voters. This is who they are.
That's
those who vote, those who don't.
Public.
But the American public, for the most part, is rejecting what Trump is doing. And this is,
how do they know?
A huge, important thing that we thought would eventually come, but didn't come. No, it wasn't based on liberal democracy, him being a fascist, exporting Americans, how he treats immigrants, none of that. It's all about the economy. It is the economy, stupid. And people who don't pay attention to the news very much know how much cars, housing, and eggs cost.
Yes.
And there's nothing Trump can do to spin that, and that's why this is what it is.
All right. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be engaged with the news. You just have to go outside and shop for things.
Go to the store. Go to a department store.
Oh, right. Carefully.
If they're still open, or notice that the one in your neighborhood has closed. I mean, these are and you used to work there, and so it affects you. So all of that stuff matters. And there's things that matter, and there's things that don't matter. One of the things that don't matter,
what don't matter? Yeah,
it don't matter what.
I'll tell you what. Yeah.
Chuck Schumer's messaging is. Nobody listens to him anyway.
That may be.
Stop getting too upset about it. Chill.
I guess that's the upside of it. It's such boring messaging that even engaged
is for engaged voters, and
listen.
Engaged voters are already on your side. So lay off a little bit.
Okay. I guess.
I mean, tune up your messaging for you, for me. Remember,
you could get
the
you
stories,
could
big
wish
stories,
for
and
good
stories
messaging.
we care about. We care about messaging. The American public does not.
It doesn't.
The median voter does not. They care about what the price of eggs is.
And it doesn't mean you can't criticize. You could wish for good messaging. Just don't worry too much that particular guy has bad messaging because no one's
not
listening.
Just that. If you get it, it's not going to change the price of eggs.
Okay, that's true too.
So
you got to talk to the chickens. About that.
Do it right. We respect good messaging and so on and so forth. But just keep that in mind.
Okay.
So G. Elliott Morris says new polling shows that the very voters who powered Trump's return to office are now abandoning him. And if that trend holds, it could upend assumptions about how much campaign messaging and elite discourse really matters, because it turns out people who don't read the Times, don't watch the Sunday shows, don't care about the policy details, still very much care when the economy sours and their lives get harder. Yeah, so this is the story of the disengaged voter. This is such a good piece. It's well worth spending time on. Late,
but okay. Yeah, I wish they had become disengaged sooner.
Yeah.
Okay.
What Trump's election showed us was the consequences of an increasingly engagement gap in the U.S. And that's what I was showing you with that scatter plot I was talking about.
Yeah, there's something about the fact that it's a scatter plot and drawn by hand that makes it look like, well, did you just make that up?
Authentic,
I guess.
It's like going to a lecture and the guy still does black and white slides. Oh, it must be really important because he never learned anything about modern presentation.
Well, I can draw dots anywhere I want. Are you sure
I have
that's
honest
the
black
data?
and white slides, I heard a presenter say. Therefore, they must be true.
Okay.
By engagement, I don't just mean, G. Elliott Morris, don't just mean engagement in the voting process, but engagement in politics or political information. For example, a post-election survey from Data for Progress found that, here's the exact numbers I was trying to quote by memory and almost got right but didn't, found that the voters who paid the most attention to the news in 2024 voted for Harris by 6. Those who paid no attention at all voted for Trump by 19. And that's why you saw that even if you're liberal, if you didn't pay attention to the news, you're a Trump voter. Because you don't vote on ideology.
And
you don't vote on what
voting,
people say is good or bad or liberal democracy or he's a fascist or whatever. Well, Democrats are also posting huge numbers in special elections, largely because low engagement voters don't show up.
Yeah.
So the +6 Harris voters show up and the +19 Trump voters don't. That's a big problem for the Republican Party because it's not a party remade as MAGA. It isn't. It's still a Trump cult. And if Trump's not on the ballot, they don't show up.
Yeah, I think that's got to be true. And I don't really know why they show up for Trump either. Imagine being a liberal-ish person and being so disengaged as you're like, that's nice skin. I guess.
But the point is, if you showed up now, these same people you're talking about, they'd vote for Harris.
Yeah.
In 2020, they voted for Trump because they sort of remember the economy being okay before everything happened, forgot that Trump was president during the majority of the pandemic, blamed it on Biden, saw inflation, which is all the news talked about, and therefore their friends talked about it, and therefore, Joe Rogan and Dave Portnoy talked about it, and that's where they heard it, and so they blamed Biden, and they voted for Trump. And it may seem simplistic, but that's what happened. And now, what you really need to do, you want to do messaging, you get Portnoy and Rogan to say, you know what, this really sucks. And that's not hard because they're not Bill Maher, who I don't include in the concept of being a influencer. He's just like a 24-karat jerk and has been for decades. I'm talking about Portnoy and Rogan, who people listen to.
Portnoy. Oh, he's the Barstool guy, right? Okay, yeah. And he's had both of them have had some breaks with Trump.
And those breaks matter because that reaches the public, and that's why, they are indicative of, I'm not sure that they're in the front leading the parade, but they're indicative of what their audience is hearing. And they just reinforce it. So a big reason why Trump won in 2024, says G. Elliott Morris, is that Americans who are least likely to be informed about the news don't show up. But they showed up and voted for him. These are the people that are hardest to reach with political messaging. They don't read the Times. They don't digest a lot of political advertising on cable and network television. They get most of their opinions about politics through dialogue with their friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, and on social media. And that social media is huge. huge, bigly.
Yes.
Staffers for Harris's 24 campaign called these people opt-out voters. The significant fringe, the hard-to-reach middle, the swinging masses, the reactionary center, whatever you call them.
I don't like that.
They have loose ties to political parties, and they're more react with political and economic conditions than partisans. And he said, this is theory, but look at what's going on, and it's fact. And these are the people who are deserting Trump.
Okay. I guess I want to, let's differentiate between people who make their decisions based on that kind of economic stuff and people who want to sit down and discuss kitchen table issues. Those are engaged people. The disengaged people that seem to make the difference, they are influenced by the economy, but they don't actually want to sit at your table and talk to you about it. So that's something to keep in mind. Economic issues, you want to address them, have policy, get results, talk about how you did it. That they don't care about, I think.
Just do it. Yeah. That they do care about.
Yeah, okay.
So this seems to be the case.
It's interesting because
according
that's
to
the
polls,
hot topic. Yeah.
Yeah, opt-out voters are moving more against Trump than informed, engaged ones and significantly disapprove of the job he's doing. According to 2 Pew Research surveys, in February, 44% of 2024 non-voters approved of Trump. By April, that's 31% of non-voters approving of Trump, 13% drop, more than any other group. So if you didn't vote for him, the definition of non-engaged, if you didn't vote at all, you hate him more than you did.
Oh.
That's your non-engaged voter right there.
Guess so.
It'd be nice to get them to vote and get them engaged, but they're non-engaged voters by definition. So people who do not pay attention to the news have also moved against Trump in large numbers. I asked YouGov, an online poster, that's our friend Mark Blumenthal, the mystery pollster, to share data from their polls with The Economist that breaks down the president's approval rating by how much news people report consuming. Comparing these crosstabs, we see a massive 33% decline in Trump's net approval over the last 3 months with people who consume the least amount of news. When Trump was inaugurated, net approval was plus 12. Now it's minus 21. These are people who say they read or watch news hardly at all, and that compares to just a 14-point drop in Trump approval among people who say they pay attention most of the time.
Okay.
So,
well,
what does that say to you?
I don't know. It says, I don't know. I don't know what to do with somebody who's not engaged. They usually won't engage with me. So I know I'm off the hook trying to engage them in discussion. But yeah, I guess it really just means, I guess it'd take away from that the caution against being a conversational technocrat and talking to them about kitchen table issues, but just do it. But how do you just do it? You got to do it again. And we go back to, I guess, the old play of, no, you can probably and should be campaigning on, the one or two things that they actually tune into, vibe your way through the campaign, win it, do the policy, and stop telling people about, we're going to be paying this many dollars percentage-wise for your child care based on a formula.
Don't make references to whatever thing Al Gore did during the Gore W debate. I mean, I can't even remember it anymore, but everybody made fun of him.
Inventing the internet?
Yeah. So, no.
I think they like that one.
He said, what about, Bush was talking and Gore interrupted and said, what about so-and-so and so? Like, nobody heard about that. What are you saying?
Lockbox. I remember Lockbox.
Yeah, a couple of, remember the things from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
which is the
mostly,
point, really.
Right. Yeah, okay, that's true. Right. Campaign as though you're in a Saturday Night Live sketch, I guess.
Or if you want to do it a little differently,
yes,
this reinforces something we've always said, but still find annoying and difficult to digest. Most people don't care about politics.
Yeah. I guess not.
We do.
This Blue
That's
Jay
why
does.
we do this show.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to. Okay,
it's hard for me to understand that.
Intuitively, I totally understand. Well, actually, intuitively, I don't, but I get it.
Yeah.
And I have to force myself to remember most people didn't hear about what I just posted yesterday.
That's
most
true.
people didn't hear about any of this stuff. They don't know who Pete Hegseth is.
That's amazing.
Ed Henry upsets me. He doesn't.
Oh, yeah. Well, they won't know anything about him. To people, I wonder, can I go out on the street and say, do you know that 2 jet fighters fell off of the same
Well,
aircraft carrier
here are
last
things
week?
that people do care about. It's really
That's
hard
funny.
to fly
Did you hear
now.
that? Yes.
And that's what we're going to talk about
Oh.
after the break. A
Oh.
couple of stories about that.
Okay.
One dating back to February,
Ah.
pointing to how this is Trump's fault.
Oh.
But,
Yes.
but you know,
but
you can go up to people on the street and say, hey, things suck these days, don't they? You could say, housing prices are ridiculous. You could say, it's not safe to fly anymore under Trump, is it? I mean, you could say simple things that are, in fact, kitchen table issues. Just don't talk about it at the kitchen table as if it's an economic treatise. That's all.
Okay. I mean, I think we can make that work. And I think most people are hearing about, dangers in flying. I mean, we haven't even caught up.
Yeah, you want to keep it simple?
Sure.
I'll tell you how to keep it simple.
Yes.
Every time you hear somebody complain, you go, oh, that's Trump's fault, isn't it? And then you just walk away.
That's true. They may yell at you, but then you can still walk away.
Yeah,
it's not Trump's fault.
You don't have to stay and argue with them.
Go ahead.
But just remind them this is Trump's fault. That's all.
It has to be. Is he's the president. This was always.
He blamed everything on Biden, and what he didn't blame on Biden, he's blaming on FDR. Well, blame him.
I blame Millard Fillmore. He's totally at fault for this. Yeah. Well,
but there's a strategy behind that because his advisors are deliberately trying to undo the 20th century and FDR. Different story about that. But the whole idea is you don't have to really get down into the nitty gritty and all of the details.
I guess you don't. And to the extent you frustrate them wildly by just saying, oh, it's Trump's fault. It just is. Then, I don't know. Good.
The more people who tell that to them in different directions, the more it's going to sink in.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they would
Then it becomes everybody knows it's Trump's fault.
Influenced by that sort of, mentality. Right? Everybody keeps telling me it's Trump's fault. Well, I don't believe any of it. There's certainly going to be people who are unpersuadable. You've told us about that a million times. But I guess a couple of ashamed or regretful Trump voters, or even I still think he's a great guy, but it's true the prices are up, and he is the president.
Your business went bankrupt, didn't it? Whose fault was that?
That's definitely Trump. We know any bankruptcy is his fault.
Hi everybody, this is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show in the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I learned over the break that it's not the case. Someone's explanation for the problems with the aircraft carrier in the Red Sea, an enormous cat pushing the aircraft off the deck one at a time just to see them fall. But this second accident, I guess, is Greg. Did you find this out just from searching while we were looking?
For you. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So it was just a troublesome landing, which they're enormously difficult things to do. To land a plane anywhere is hard, and on a boat, yes, difficult.
Professionals look up stuff and then they talk about it. Amateurs like me talk about it and then look up stuff to see if I was right.
Yeah, then, right. And if we're a Republican podcast, we just say the thing and, we're wrong.
And don't bother looking about
it. Don't tell them. But, okay, it wasn't another aircraft falling off the deck because of, it was a good explanation, the first one, being fired at by Houthis. And they made a hard, sharp turn, and I guess they banked, and off the deck goes a an F-18. But
Yeah.
this one was just a problematic landing that went extremely bad.
Yeah, which is a reminder that doing this is hard.
It is. I would say don't try it at home, but I mean, unless you got a big backyard, you won't.
It was landing on the flight deck of USS Harry Truman when the arrestment failed, causing the aircraft to go overboard. The pilots got off okay.
Good news. The arrestments failed? Is that the tail?
Yeah, well, it lands. It's not long enough so that you can glide to it to stop.
And
there's a net and a hook, and, you get caught.
Should put it. Now, all of our aircraft carriers from now on, trampolines on the front. So if you, okay. Great. Something, steam, catapult.
Obviously, the giant cats didn't work out. Now we're going to do giant dogs because they pay attention and obey a little bit better.
Yeah.
If that doesn't work, we're going to move to gorillas.
I love gorillas. They have a whole channel. Imagine the aircraft carrier is a giant department store. Sir, please.
Exactly.
All right.
So,
what else?
This is from the cross-section, Paul Waldman, no relation to David Waldman. Trump's powers of persuasion are failing him. These are some things you can't spin away, especially with spin this lame.
Power of persuasion. Okay.
You probably had the experience of watching Trump say some spectacularly dumb, false, or outrageous thing and responding, are people actually going to believe that? And a distressingly large portion of the time, the answer was, yeah, they do.
Oh.
So for anybody who opposes him, watching him lie or just say idiotic things, it's a doubly frustrating experience. Painful because of the loathsome utterance and what immediately follows, the sickening suspicion that some people buy it.
Yes.
But if you do oppose him, there's reason for hope. Trump's powers of persuasion are substantial but not limitless. Mm-hmm. He couldn't persuade a court that he was innocent, for example.
All right, yeah. Well, he was asleep.
That in. So it's not limitless. His success had always depended. He's a felon. He's a convicted felon. His success has always depended on luck and timing, and he's been in his most advantageous political position when somebody else was in power and therefore could be blamed for anything and everything that anybody might not like.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why I think it's very effective to walk up to people and say, hey, you're not happy about that? Like your key won't work in your car because the battery died on your fob? That's Trump's fault.
Oh.
When he is the one carrying responsibility, most people turn away from him, as they are doing right now. And that's when his vulnerability is revealed. For the second time, Trump was bequeathed a strong economy by a Democrat. The difference this time is that he's undertaken radical policy changes, which, in effect, to summarize, is ruining the economy. The master spinner, Waldman writes, has dealt with that fact by saying it isn't his fault, which led to this pathetic exchange in his recent interview on Meet the Press. I think the good parts of the Trump economy and the bad parts of the Biden economy.
Yeah. That was
asked
crazy.
When it becomes Trump economy, he said, I think the good parts are that it's not just laughable to people who don't like Trump. It's laughable to anybody. Trump's always counted on the public's limited power of understanding and deliberation. Right?
Wrong.
But now it's working against him. So there's a meme out there, a joke that I didn't hear before this article because maybe this article is too engaged. I don't know. You heard it? Trump take egg?
Yeah, sure.
Premise of the joke is that it's an argument against Trump so simple that even basic grammar is unnecessary. He promised to bring down grocery prices. He didn't, so Trump take egg.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And that's why G. Elliott Morris's piece, which he's commenting on, is so intriguing. What Trump is trying to do now is similar to what Democrats were lectured over and over about supposedly doing in 2024. Every time they spoke about the economy, Biden would say, we know prices have gone up, but we've made a lot of progress and things are getting better. It was 100% true, and they're never anything but apologetic, and they were scolded for suggesting that Biden's policies had a good effect, with one pundit after another saying, how dare you deny the reality of people's lives? You can't tell them their suffering isn't real. Curse you, I say. And the Trump argument today is we're going through a wee bit of adjustment, but, it's going to be great.
Yeah. Well, not so easy.
Right. So now keep in mind, he spent the last year trying to convince everybody tariffs are awesome. Now, and by the way, he was going to lower prices on day one. Now Trump has decided the clever argument is to basically tell people to suck it up.
Okay.
So, no, Trump does not have the power to mesmerize the public, and it's getting more obvious all the time.
Good.
I'm not even going to talk about his mental decline, which is part of it as well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then let me just throw in this other piece from the Liberal Patriot that's Roy Teixeira's place, but this is Michael Baharin writing, just as a reminder about some things that were true but we forget about.
All right.
And it's part and parcel of this whole idea of how you approach things. Democrats are forgetting an important lesson from Obama. Americans are angry and looking for candidates who represent change, not a defense of the political establishment.
Mm-hmm.
Obama ran against Bush, Washington, and the people who brought you this recession. In other words.
Okay.
It worked.
All right.
Even Republicans don't like W.
Not now. True.
Not now.
Yeah.
But at the time, they didn't like him. When he left office, he wasn't all that popular.
Right.
And people blamed the Great Recession on him. And Obama ran against that. So he ran against the establishment. Yes, he became the establishment. We're not talking about his reelection. But when he ran for the first time, he was the anti-establishment person. So that's something that works in Democrats' favor. It's just that Chuck Schumer isn't exactly the best messenger for it.
Yeah, all right. He's pretty, kind of.
AOC can do it. Bernie can do it. It's not that if you're a politician, you can't do it. Ossoff can do it. Warnock can do it. I mean, if you are seen, even Fetterman, whether you like him or not, can do it. If you are seen as an establishment guy like Dick Durbin, you can't do it. But if you're seen as a non-establishment type, even if you are within the establishment, then you can. So that is a tool. It's not the wonder tool that wins everything, but it's another tool in the toolbox that you have to keep in mind.
Okay.
So people like Chuck Schumer, who are trying to message for the party, Hakeem Jeffries, can remind people it's Republicans who are in power. They control the House, Senate, and White House. I mean, that's not difficult.
Right.
Well, and that's just an extra tool that people have to remember to use.
Okay. Well, I think it should be on every Democratic politician's mind that they're in the minority everywhere and they need to win the majority. So, yeah. So
that's, that all goes because Trump is vulnerable. So, this is how you throw him an anvil. Now, Slow Boring, Matt Iglesias' shop, has a paywall piece, which I thought was nonetheless interesting. Econ 101 is underrated, a powerful, flexible paradigm for understanding the world, Econ 101. And basically, he goes through the things about tariffs.
All right.
And how not to get too nuanced about it. In terms of the merits of Econ 101, an important point about this is that voters often seem to disagree with Econ 101, preferring to achieve social goals via pre-distribution. That is to say that you don't construct a living wage by making the economy run beautifully.
Okay.
Give people money.
Yeah.
We'd like that better.
Okay.
Now, that may not fit Econ 101.
Yeah.
But it fits what people want. And he goes on to say people want what they want, and sometimes you have to give it to them. But on the other hand, public skepticism underscores the fact that Econ 101 insights, even though they seem boring and oversimplified, are non-trivial and important. So you have to balance, like the Fed, how things actually work with what voters want.
Yeah.
The Fed's real goal is to keep inflation under control. They've been tasked, I guess, by Congress and or other presidents to also make sure that as many people as possible are employed. But if you ask the Fed and left it to them, that would be a secondary goal.
Yeah, that seems to be
the primary goal because they've been
I
told
remember
it's a
that we had
primary
this
goal. But
discussion.
they'd rather just keep inflation under control and let the market do what it does.
Well, it's certainly difficult to do both at once successfully all the time.
Right,
And,
but that's what they're told is their job.
Right. Well, it's a hard
And
job.
so that's where you get Econ 101 versus what the people want. Because if you ask the people, first they'll tell you, no, I want a job. True. And then they'll complain if prices are too high. But that's later. Whereas for the Fed, it's the other way around. So this raises the question of whether voters like to live under highly inefficient, slow-growth policy regimes, and I think the answer to that is no.
Yeah.
Regardless of specific opinions,
Well,
I mean, this is look, I want less taxes and I want more services, and I want what I want.
yeah.
And stop telling me I
sure.
shouldn't want what I want. Stop telling me that's impossible. So that's basically what he's saying. And the thing is, you can see the power of Econ 101 in the fiasco of Liberation Day, but also the deer in the headlights response from the segments of the progressive community that have spent the past few decades complaining about free trade. Progressives wanted to say that while Trump's tariffs were bad, it's not the case that all tariffs are bad, but that struggled to explain coherently what this meant.
Yeah.
Now, tariffs, or in this case, quotas, on imported sugar, for example, impose diffuse costs on the broad swath of Americans who eat sugar, which is like everybody.
Pretty much.
But they also provide a concentrated benefit to a small number of Americans who grow sugar. And because the cost of sugar protectionism to the average person is small because it's diffused over everybody, and the benefit of sugar protectionism to the average sugar plantation is large, it is what it is, and so it exists.
Okay.
Auto workers would like the government to impose tariffs to protect their jobs, even though it makes cars more expensive. Okay. And so if you're trying to win over the auto workers, you're going to be for some tariffs.
Yeah.
But making the nuanced argument, he writes, that some tariffs are good, really just amounts to saying some tariffs are good for me personally.
Yes.
And that, folks, doesn't work.
Okay.
It's a bad argument. So it could be good politics to offer specific groups of people protectionism, but the reason Liberation Day was such a fiasco is that he tried to do everything for everybody at the same time, and that just is a complete failure. So if you're in Michigan and you're representing Michigan, you might want to offer a nuanced tariff policy, but be really careful about it. Because the moment you're challenged to explain why this is a good idea, you're going to struggle.
Okay.
Because what you're doing is transactional politics. It's not the merits. And that's why this whole insight about tariffs, I think, is so good. And that's why I said last week before reading this article, just say tariffs are bad.
Yeah, generally. You can always.
And then if you have to say, except for this one, okay, fine, except for this one, but tariffs are bad.
Yeah. Because
the message needs to be tariffs are bad.
I guess you can do that. I mean, I think it could probably be done even simpler and less boring than Matt Iglesias does it, but you can do almost anything less boring than he recognizes it. It's part of his title. It's boring.
Right.
But yeah, you can say tariffs are bad because they impose costs on people. Sometimes the cost is worth it, but most times it's not. So stay away from them unless you have a very, very specific case. Thank you. They are bad. They make your things cost more. Is there ever a case where it's okay to make a thing cost more? Sure, and we'll talk about it if we need to, but what is a tariff? It is bad. Who wants tariffs? Trump does. Trump wants bad things. Okay, I got it. But I'm an engaged voter, so who cares?
Right, so you don't count.
Right, you don't need me. Okay, I can get that. You know what it reminded me of is you're speaking of wanting to policy preferences or political preferences outweighing the economics of things, and that you just get people hopped up for something that is actually quite terrible. I did get a note the other day from a listener who sent something on. I'll have to see if I can find it. It's an email, but a Republican email that snuck through their spam filter and got into their inbox, and it was that they were, I guess the Republicans are rallying their troops with, you remember that at one point they were saying, there's going to be a Doge dividend, and then it turned out, they didn't actually save any money, so that would be dumb and terrible for the federal deficit if they were to promise that. Apparently, they got in their head, if we tell MAGA Republicans, no, it's the liberal media and the deep state. They're telling you can't have your Doge dividend because it quote unquote doesn't exist, but it does. And you need to pressure your Republican representatives in Congress to give you the $5,000 you're entitled to. And I wondered whether that would work with MAGA people. Like, oh yeah, no, they saved all this money, and the only reason I'm not getting the $5,000 check from Trump is the deep state and Democrats. We hate those guys. That also has no basis at all in the truth about Economics 101, but I want it anyway. I don't know whether they're really going to have the numbers to make that work, but I thought that was an interesting approach. Just simply total outright lie to people and tell them that there's $5,000 available to them. And they'd probably be willing to carry water for a lie for $5,000. Interesting idea. We'll see whether it makes an appearance in mainstream discourse.
Right. Speaking of mainstream discourse, something that might break through is apparently India and Pakistan are threatening to go to war and sort of are shooting at each other as we speak. And that's a big deal, except I don't know what it means yet.
Yeah, that I don't know.
Because they've had skirmishes before, often over Kashmir, and I'm not
this
sure
one
what
is too. So I'm not certain. We'll have to catch up because it involves millions and millions and millions, perhaps billions of people. So that's always nice to keep an eye on. And war, generally bad. Nuclear armed powers supposed to prevent this sort of thing. But hopefully, I don't think that's going to escalate to that. They do clash over Kashmir frequently. Not that it's not a big deal when they do. It's just not a surprise. But they've been relatively quiet of late. And that was good because less war is excellent. Mm-hmm. But we'll have to catch up on that story. But we have so much crazy to do here. And I guess the most important thing about it is there is no longer an engaged and stable superpower available to mediate or help work out the crisis.
Which is kind of a problem.
Yeah. And if you want the next best thing, it might end up being China. And that is also a problem. So, all right. It would be good to be a world player respected by both sides of that conflict. However, we're not that now.
Now, this is a political blog at times, mostly. So, we should mention that Brian Kemp is not going to run against John Ossoff for Senate.
Yes, right. Good. He was the best polling option against Ossoff for Republicans. But I don't care about that because I don't want them to have any.
And then in Florida, Ron DeSantis has a problem. Both of these pieces are in the pundit roundup, but I'll send you this one as I'm speaking about it because, I didn't remember to do that with the other one, the Kemp piece, but I do remember to do it with this one, the Ron DeSantis piece.
All right.
The scandal that he's stealing money from his wife's charity to pay interest groups that are aligned with DeSantis, thereby putting Casey DeSantis's dreams of becoming the next governor of Florida under the microscope, is starting to hit. This is inside DeSantis's made for DV fall in Florida. Yeah, finally. Now that long ago Ron DeSantis looked like the future of MAGA, the iron-fisted ruler of Florida politics, who was set up for a White House run, faces potential political obscurity, unable to control legislators in his own party who are calling for a federal investigation of his wife's charity. Why it matters? Nothing exemplifies DeSantis' striking loss of mojo in Tallahassee, like the scandal surrounding Hope Florida, the state-backed charity of First Lady Casey DeSantis, who's been eyeing a bid to succeed him. The charity received $10 million in secret settlement money from a Medicaid provider days before the charity sent the same amount to two political groups favored by DeSantis.
Yes.
House Republicans and independent observers allege the arrangement amounted to an illegal siphoning of Medicaid funds. The governors denied wrongdoing and said Republicans are doing a bogus political smear. But if that's your position, it means you've lost your fellow Republicans. So DeSantis doesn't have any favor left because, the Trumpy people hate him anyway. Mm-hmm. And so there's just so many different things going on, whether it's Brian Kemp looking at the environment and saying maybe this isn't the right time to run, to DeSantis having to defend himself from fellow Republicans.
Yeah.
to think that, some of the many wheels are coming off this multi-wheeled Trump bus.
18, an 18-wheeler with fewer wheels. Yeah, it's happening. I had read a little bit about the Hope Florida thing, and then there was an immediate threat that Republican legislators there would vote to move an investigation forward on the state level. Then, as it turns out, I don't know, somehow they all piled on the guy and they didn't do it. And now
they're still afraid, but if the feds do it, then it's off them. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Now, I would do it if I were them.
I guess so. I mean, you have to call for that. Although then, my immediate thought right now, of course, this federal government, an investigation of a Republican, I don't know. But remember, it is Meatball Ron, and Trump has good reason to be bitter about him and hate him. And
but we also saw how it works in Texas with Ken Paxton, who's as crooked as they come.
Right.
He was impeached, but he wasn't convicted because he convinced his fellow Republicans to leave him alone.
Yeah.
By just enough so that he survived a vote so he could run for governor, despite the fact that he's got major convictions either staring at him, behind him, or whatever. And so, I don't get it. I don't understand why the public is willing to vote for a crook like that. I don't understand why they're willing to vote for a crook like Trump. I don't understand why fellow Republicans don't jettison him as a liability. I don't understand Texas. I fully admit all of that.
I guess.
But nonetheless, you'd think Florida was even more of a lock for DeSantis, he is governor, than Paxton, who isn't. And yet...
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm glad that the issue survives. I thought that they might have intimidated the leaders of the legislature who were pushing this into shutting up, but I guess that they have not.
They failed.
Good. I mean, they smelled the blood in the water.
DeSantis failed in intimidation where Paxton succeeded with the big money and oil money behind him.
I guess on the other hand, the Brian Kemp story, I have to imagine... I would guess that he probably anticipated being savaged in the primary by Trump, who I think still hates him for not, helping out with reversing the vote in 2020 in Georgia. Just like it would be like if Brad Raffensperger ran, he would obviously be attacking him.
In the business world, in the corporate world, if you do something good, your peers and or bosses will look at that and say, that's really good, but does it scale?
Oh, okay, that's true. They will say that. I don't know why, but they do.
Yeah, because they want to know how much money they can make if you're not there. Like if you move on, can we make it so that it still works, whatever the magic is, whatever the mojo?
Okay. Is there a way for us to make more money without you?
Yeah, or by doing this thing. Look, Kagro in the morning is what it is, but does it scale? Can we go national?
No.
No.
Right.
But that's, but that's what they ask.
Okay.
All right.
Are there synergies across multiple platforms? I don't know.
Yeah,
I hear them ask that.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I don't know.
That's great word salad that really, gets to the point of what's going on.
I think it's about 25 years out of date, but yeah. That's what I used to hear all the time. Sure.
So, the question is, when you look at Paxton or when you look at DeSantis, you ask the question, well, does it scale? Well, for them, they thought it did. Paxton still doesn't have a final answer. For DeSantis, it's obviously no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Brian Kemp, Republican governor of Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay. Brad Raffensperger, Republican Secretary of State. His able first mate, who runs the election process.
Oh, yeah.
Gabe Rose. What's his name? Gabe
Sherman.
Gabe. I forget his name.
Yeah, Gabe, though. You're right about that. I'll look.
These guys are pretty good at doing their job and relatively popular with the public.
Yeah.
And the question is, does that scale? And where would you want to take it? I don't think Raffensperger can win the governorship because there's still too many people mad at him for being honest with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Kemp could run for senator. He could beat John Ossoff. He's popular enough.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he would, but, he's a pretty good chance he would. But for Brian Kemp, that puts him in the Senate. And it used to be that was an attractive job. And moving from governor to Senate is not unusual. Happened in Florida. Happened in a lot of different places. Some governors find you can't do it, like in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And I think people like Brian Kemp, who's used to being an executive, making decisions and in charge, would find that this is not an attractive position now.
That's true.
Would be one of 100, and out of those 100, nobody listens to me. They only listen to Trump. I don't know if I want that.
We have a pretty strong Senate or governor to Senate pipeline here in Virginia, but that may have to do with the single term limit. Oh, what else am I going to do?
Right. But even so, I think it's less attractive than it used to be.
Especially if you're in a place with a strong governorship or you've had the 2 terms and everybody listens to you and you are exercising your prerogative as commander of the state National Guard.
And then you have to move to Congress, and even though you're a senator and you look down on the House anyway, by definition, you have to treat Marjorie Taylor Greene as if, at the very least, she's real.
No, I would. You just talked me out of it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it.
I'm not doing that.
I could see that. And, of course, now service in this Congress as a Republican just means you're just going to have to say whatever Trump wants.
So I'm saying these are personal reasons, not because he's looked at the environment and say, oh, Trump is dropping in the polls, I can't win. That's not why he did it, I think. I think he did it because I don't want to work next to Marjorie Taylor Greene in any context that makes me acknowledge that she exists.
I mean, it didn't even register with me. Yeah, she's part of your delegation. She's from Georgia. Oh my God, you have to work with him.
You have to work with her.
Yeah, that would be a miserable experience.
Treat her
I don't think it was that he was afraid
peer.
he would lose.
I'm not doing that.
He's afraid to win and have to go do this stuff. And then, and have
Some
to be
people
subjugated
don't. That's right.
by Trump.
Some people run because they're afraid they're going to lose. He's not going to run because he's afraid he'd win.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's an experience. Where do you go? I don't know. I wonder what's available to him. Does he think?
I think maybe he'll run for Virginia Senate.
Oh, he's going to move? Well, I guess that's possible. But, yeah, I mean, you're not going to get an ambassadorship out of Trump, I wouldn't think. And, I mean, you can't even say, what do? You try to become president of the University of Georgia? He'll just attack you there. But all the traditional routes out of that office are maybe foreclosed to him. He might have to get a job.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel. In this economy? Are you kidding? Well, he can always build dolls.
Maybe we'll talk more tomorrow about Ed Martin and the disaster.
Yes, we need to do that because it doesn't look like we're going to vote on him anytime soon. We'll have another chance tomorrow. Thanks.
Well, he won't get out of committee, but that doesn't mean he won't get a vote.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. By the way, the right-hand man to Brad Raffensperger, Gabriel Sterling, got the last name there, and I don't know where I was heading in 10 different directions. Was one of them that Greg mentioned? I think he did mention a surname that began with an S. And did he hit the nail on the head with the Sterling or not? I can't recall, but that's the name we were looking for. And I don't know. None of them are going to be running for Senate anytime soon, I guess, in the Trump atmosphere. Probably not. Let's see. There's a story I parked somewhere that has nothing to do with anything, but was bizarre and weird and involved somebody who's perpetually trying to run for statewide office, Kari Lake, and losing. And somewhere in this whole place, I don't know, I thought that sometimes you go to pocket things and they just don't make it all the way to pocket for some reason. But somewhere in here has got to be the story. If I haven't pocketed a link to something to prove that it happened, then oh well, too bad. Oh, here we go. I found the pocket link, which was just a Blue Sky post from yesterday, which in itself was just a screenshot of some Twitter posts or maybe possibly Truth Social posts. Kari Lake gabbing and blabbing about it. But an organized version of that comes from NPR now, and it's important that it come from NPR. Kari Lake says that, by the way, do you know what Kari Lake is doing these days? I guess it's important to point that out. She is the director or whatever. I don't know. She's in charge of whatever reorganized entity has come out the other end of the dodgy process of what used to be the Voice of America radio outlet and associated federally supported, well, they're essentially propaganda radio networks that we broadcast into other countries in hopes of convincing them that this place is fantastic. Just don't come here or we'll throw you right back out. I don't know how that's supposed to work, and making Kari Lake in charge of it, I guess in that sense does make perfect sense. We're now a bunch of crazy asses. Shouldn't our international broadcast also be crazy ass? And now it will be. Kari Lake says OAN's far-right coverage, One America News, you remember them? OAN's far-right coverage will fuel the Voice of America. So now the rest of the world will think that the Voice of America, not necessarily, I mean, I'm not talking about the radio network, although I am, but that the big gestalt concept of America's voice will now be, thanks to Voice of America Radio, OAN. O-N-O. Oh, no. I can't believe that is happening. And sadly it is. David Folkenflik reports it for NPR, which ought to be the Voice of America, except for the fact that it's sometimes so foolishly down the middle about things, even about their own destruction. But it would be a better choice than OAN anyway. Frankly, I should be the Voice of America. How about that? But I can't get that contract. Unless, of course, I fund political networks, sweep in a Democratic president and Congress, and simply use my political capture of the public purse strings to essentially embezzle money directly out of the Treasury and just award the contract, no bid, to me. But, we don't do that. All right. Well, I'm just going to have to do without. Senior presidential advisor, Kari Lake. That's an interesting way of describing her. Does that mean she didn't land this other job, or it's an extra hat that she wears alongside it, like Marco Rubio? I don't know. Senior presidential advisor Kari Lake appears to have resolved any doubts about what she wants to do with the Voice of America. Lake seeks for it to look and sound a lot like the far-right One America News network. On Tuesday night, she announced, well, it was one Tuesday night, it was the last one. Tuesday night, she announced that she had struck a deal. Oh boy, I guess that didn't work then. Struck a deal to serve up the pro-Trump outlets' news reports for Voice of America's foreign audiences at no taxpayer cost. That doesn't sound like it's realistic at all. In fact, the bigger worry in all of this is probably that they will, in fact, create not only a tremendous taxpayer cost, but that it will be pipelining public dollars directly to OAN when their business on its own merits was actually losing money hand over fist. So, it's supposed to be a loss leader thing. It's funded by Republican advocates who are pouring money down the drain for the purposes of tapping its political power. Anyway, she says no taxpayer cost. That doesn't make any sense. I can ensure our outlets have reliable and credible options as they work to craft their reporting and news programs, Lake wrote on social media posts on Elon Musk's X and on Truth Social, two super reliable platforms. And every day I look for ways to save American taxpayers money. Bringing in OAN as a video/news source does both. OAN President Charles Herring did not immediately reply to NPR's message seeking confirmation, but he did retweet Lake's post. Generally speaking, ordinarily Republicans will only get excited about something like that. I'm being selected to provide the coverage for Voice of America News because they'll get paid to do it. Now, Lake is saying, oh, well, we won't pay them. Now, that could be a lie, and we will pay them. But it also could be true, and instead, some, billionaire Republican who backs OAN will just take care of paying all the people, and we can, quote unquote, save taxpayers money. Of course, the money that they're getting from the billionaire is itself money that was siphoned away from the treasury and taxpayers by undertaxing billionaires such that they became billionaires in the first place. But hey, never mind that. Let's focus on this one aspect of the story. The reaction from the agency and network veterans was swift and indignant. It would be, I guess, as the title of this next section is, a mockery of the agency's history. Kari Lake, providing One American News Network to our global audiences, makes a mockery of the agency's history of independent, nonpartisan journalism. Former U.S. Agency for Global Media Chief Financial Officer Grant Turner tells NPR. And I think that's where Kari Lake is landing. She's the head of the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Since World War II, the Voice of America has provided news coverage and cultural programming to lands across the globe without access to a free press, serving an audience that has grown to more than 360 million people weekly. Its charge, established by Congress, is to incorporate criticism of the government's official line to convey the news in its complexity, but also to model what a pluralistic democracy looks like. Since March, however, the Voice of America has been stilled on the order of Trump and Lake, at the direction, of course, of the dodgy boys. Her announcement called the parent agency, quote, a giant rot and burden to the American taxpayer. Lake put nearly the entire workforce on indefinite leave under the current status of pending litigation filed by a coalition of Voice of America journalists, agency employees, unions, and press advocacy groups. The U.S. Agency for Global Media must run programs on Voice of America once again. It's just that all the people who produce those programs are on indefinite leave. So she's created a vacuum here into which she's inviting OAN. I guess that's the mechanism. The addition of OAN might help Lake accomplish that is, must run programs, that part, might help her accomplish that without reconstituting the network as it was. According to 3 Voice of America staffers who remain on forced leave, the agency asked a small number of journalists back on Tuesday. At the same time, contractors are beginning to receive termination notices. The staffers spoke on condition that they not be named, citing concerns of repercussions given the current climate at the agency. They just got their paychecks back, and they don't want to lose them again. Lake has not responded to NPR's request for comment. Earlier this year, the White House canceled Voice of America's contracts with major news services, including the Associated Press, who they still haven't let back into the White House, as I understand it, Reuters, and the French press agency. How do they say that? Is it it's AGENCE? Now in French, is that just agency or is it agence? I don't know. Anyway, the AFP, French press agency, outlets that the broadcaster used to supplement its reporting. Normal mainstream news outlets. OAN's resolute support of Trump led to legal trouble, says the next section. OAN has distinguished itself by its resolute support of President Trump, even as he insisted falsely that he had been cheated of re-election in 2020, and all the way up to and including when he was insisting not only was he cheated from re-election, as he claimed, but that he had in fact won, and that January 6th and the insurrection weren't even insurrections. They were good, peaceful, patriotic upholding of the constitutional duty to, as he viewed it, to give Donald Trump the presidency. OAN reached settlements to resolve separate defamation lawsuits filed by the voting software company Smartmatic, a former executive at Dominion Voting Systems, and 2 Georgia election workers, there's Georgia again, over disproven claims that they had helped rig the 2020 presidential elections for Democratic nominee Joe Biden. Trump aides have welcomed OAN reporters to the White House and called upon them during press briefings, while media mainstays have had their access curtailed at the White House and Pentagon. Trump's first pick for U.S. Attorney General Matt Gaetz has now become a host for the network after his planned nomination collapsed. Current and former U.S. Agency for Global Media and Voice of America staffers said OAN programming would not fulfill the network's mission. I don't think this complies with our statutory mandate. Oh, no. And I don't think audiences will take to it, says Turner, who served as the agency's acting CEO. I didn't realize he was an acting CEO under Trump from October of 2019 to June 2020. The truth has a certain feel, and audiences can sense that. Congress mandated VOA to report reliable and authoritative news, not outsource its journalism to outlets aligned with the president's agenda. Voice of America White House Bureau Chief Patsy, what is this? I'm working on this last name. Widakuswara, maybe? Oh, boy. Well, sorry, Patsy, if I got it anything less than 100%. But Patsy says Congress mandated VOA to report reliable and authoritative news, not garbage like OAN might do. And let's see. Also in agreement here, press freedom editor Jessica Jerriott, in a joint statement shared with NPR, joined with Patsy in that. We will continue fighting is the next section. The two journalists, both currently on indefinite leave, are among the group of staffers who have sued Lake and the Trump administration, alleging that their actions towards Voice of America broke the law and violated constitutional free press protections. They are currently appealing an adverse decision by an appellate panel to the full roster of federal appellate judges for the D.C. Circuit, standing among a workforce whipsawed by a series of contradictory announcements and judicial rulings. VOA already has talented and professional journalists ready to tell America's story in line with the VOA charter, but we're blocked from our own newsroom. Widakuswara, maybe, and Jerriott said, that is why we will continue fighting for our rights in court. For the Voice of America and its sister networks, the one constant to the restoration of Trump to the White House has been chaos. At the behest of an executive order in mid-March, Lake silenced its broadcasts, froze its website in time, and put nearly everyone at the U.S. Agency for Global Media and the network on indefinite leave. She also stopped paying Voice of America's sister networks that are privately incorporated but rely on federal support. That would be Radio Free Europe / Radio Liberty, Radio Free Asia, and the Middle East Broadcasting Networks. Kari Lake, President Trump's senior advisor, unlawfully terminated our grant agreement, said Jeffrey Gedmin, President and Chief Executive of the Middle East Broadcasting Networks. We've been starved of resources ever since, forced to terminate more than 90% of our staff. The American taxpayer, MBN's congressionally mandated mission, and pro-American audiences are all big losers in this wasteful, reckless, and foolish power game. Radio Free Asia and Radio Free Europe / Radio Liberty have been forced to lay off most of their staffs, too. All the networks are enmeshed in related lawsuits against Lake and the White House. 10 journalists who report for the networks are imprisoned across the globe. Their access to legal and security assistance imperiled, according to a March report in the Columbia Journalism Review by Liam Scott. Scott previously covered press freedom for the Voice of America. And let's see, getting toward the end here, but actually, it's gone on long enough, don't you think? Well, one last bit here. Lake celebrates an appellate panel's ruling after a federal judge ruled that she had to reverse course last week. Lake appeared on Newsmax TV to praise Trump's first 100 days and blasted court rulings against his administration. We've got district court judges who think they have more power than the President of the United States, Lake said, echoing Trump's nonsense. On Friday, Lake sent out a note to staffers saying they will receive guidance on how the agency will modernize and meet its mission. We look forward to working with you all, Lake summed up. Just a day later, a 3-judge appellate court panel ruled that the judge had overstepped, finding that the dispute over Voice of America should be mediated through labor and employment administrative processes before taken to courts. Both judges in the majority were, not surprisingly, appointed by Trump in his first term. The lone dissenter, appointed by President Barack Obama, argued that Trump was exceeding his authority in seeking to dismantle Voice of America, given congressional support and funding for its activities. The government cannot seriously contend on this posture that the relevant statutes, or more foundationally, the constitutional separation of powers, permits the president to wholly scupper, everyone loves the verb scupper, Voice of America and its affiliated networks. Judge Cornelia Pillard wrote in dissent, "The plaintiffs are appealing that ruling, but Lake has been celebrating. Big win," she tweeted that afternoon. "Huge victory." The government had not fought the part of the initial ruling requiring that Voice of America get back on the air. With Tuesday night's announcement, Lake showed what she'd like that to look like. So she didn't win on the get to stay off the air part. So she said, all right, we'll just substitute OAN in and relabel it Voice of America. It's a thing you can do when you're in control of the government. So anyway, I just thought that might be of some interest to you and serve as some kind of transition from what we were speaking about earlier. I don't know why. I guess, oh yeah, that's right. It was loser Republicans and, although this time Trump sycophant loser Republicans running for higher office statewide and getting nowhere. What were they up to? Well, they're up to destroying things from a different part of the government. All right. Well, this might be of interest as a segue just in terms of what sort of news reporting and media places like One America News are about, and what Trump does when he's in control of media, and what might international audiences be able to expect if they control the external messaging. That's a good question. Let's see. This from Talking Points memo. I don't know. It's not a hard news item necessarily, but all the millions of things that are going on in the background that create this kind of chaos and insanity, I think, need some attention. This is not Josh Marshall himself, but Hunter Walker, one of his able staffers, writing this thing. We see his byline all the time. President Trump's media company. And it's interesting that he would give he's got to keep some allies happy, I guess, and keep OAN working by giving them the contract over at Voice of America. But Voice of America could have, Trump could have directed Kari Lake to say, no, the contract should go to Trump's media company. And I forget the name of it, but we'll get to it in just a minute. Maybe something as easy as Trump Media Company, Trump Media and Technology Group. There you go. President Trump's media company is offering movies about, truthy stuff like the lizard people and other wild conspiracy theories. Isn't that interesting? Among other things, movies on the Truth Plus streaming service. Did you know there was one? I know we shouldn't be giving it any attention, but we won't be telling any people who are actually interested in subscribing to it anything about it because they don't listen to this show. Among other things, movies on the Truth Plus streaming service have suggested Jesus Christ and Buddha are aliens. How does that go over with his evangelical audience? I'm not sure. Anyway, less than 2 minutes into the movie, Hunter begins by telling us, the narrator makes a shocking claim. The evidence we are about to present to you. Evidence? The evidence we are about to present to you has the potential to rewrite thousands of years of human history. It will present evidence. I thought you were presenting evidence. It will present evidence that suggests ancient serpent or lizard-like aliens came to Earth thousands of years ago, the narrator says. We'll also present evidence that these ancient aliens are still among us today. Now, mind you, when most people hear the word evidence, they mean factual assertions that are provably true and therefore will lead you to the conclusion that the thesis makes sense. But I do remind you, anything can be evidence. Not always admissible evidence in court, but anything can be evidence. I say that Donald Trump is a centaur. That is evidence. Does it tend to prove that he's a centaur? It's not good evidence, but if you are a believer in centaurs and you hear me say that, you will say, I heard that on the radio. That's evidence. It's just not good stuff. So, okay, we'll present evidence that there were aliens, like by saying there were aliens. There you go. That's evidence. But for most people, they think, well, damn, it was evidence. And evidence gets put in court, and court's serious, and they prove things there. Therefore, boom. I mean, that's kind of how it works. Never mind how it works. What are they telling people? This bizarre narrative echoes a paranoia about shadowy reptilians, really, that has persisted for decades on the absolute fringes of the conspiracy theory movement. However, in this case, the story of serpent or lizard-like aliens who are secretly wielding influence over the human race isn't coming from some pamphlet or dark corner of the internet. It is among the most watched films available for streaming on a service run by a multi-billion-dollar media company that is owned by the President of the United States. And that's really where it becomes problematic. When they launched a streaming service last year, President Trump's business partners at the Trump Media and Technology Group announced it would be focused on news, Christian content like Alien Jesus, and family-friendly programming that is uncancelable by big tech. Big tech is their ally now, of course. Yet this supposed haven for young viewers and wholesome Christian fare is also home to lizard people, rulers of time and space. I have to do my own effects here. A bizarre hour-long movie that presents claims that there is a race of serpent-like aliens who created humans and the religious systems used to control them, you see. As of this writing, Trump's company is marketing this to viewers as a documentary. It's not the only one on their platform filled with shocking statements linking Christianity and other faiths to shadowy, sinister alien conspiracies. I don't really know why that's supposed to be helpful to them, but okay. These ideas are easy to dismiss as utterly and obviously ridiculous. Good, let's do it. However, they have a history of attracting troubled believers on the furthest conspiracy fringe, some of whom I guess climb up on rooftops at rallies and shoot the president. Anyway, and while these movies are available on other streaming platforms, in this case, the sitting president's nascent media empire is playing a role in the promotion of this extreme content. Trump's streaming service also seems to have helped it find an audience. On Monday, and throughout much of last week, Lizard People was listed among the top 10 most watched programs on the streaming service, though they may only have 10. I don't know. This service and some of its more unhinged offerings is effectively the underbelly of one of the more prominent features of the new Trump era, Truth Social. Throughout his second re-election campaign and first 100 days back in office, President Trump has used the Truth Social platform to issue near-constant updates, I guess you could call them, including policy pronouncements, maybe, personnel announcements, also maybe, attacks on his political enemies, and even musings on last month's NFL draft. The site serves a quasi-official role, with Trump's truths sometimes also being distributed by the official White House press office of communications. Truth Social was launched in early 2022 after Trump was banned from multiple more mainstream sites following the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. The platform is the centerpiece of Trump Media and Technology Group, a company that is majority owned by the president and that has extensive ties to his current administration. More recently, as Trump's media empire has made headlines for quickly losing and raising massive sums of cash, it has expanded beyond social networking into other forms of entertainment. Now, the company's ventures include Truth Plus, the streaming service, with multiple films being marketed as documentaries that present wild conspiracy theories, including, well, the same damn thing. I don't know why they keep restating this. About aliens manipulating world events and are using religion and other means to secretly control humanity. TPM reached out to TMTG for comment on this surprising fare. Spokeswoman Shannon Devine, that name sounds familiar. Was she the accountant at one point? Shannon Devine. Do I have that wrong? I don't know. I'm going to look, see if we can figure her out. But she's listed as, she's got this current job. I guess the question is, what did she used to? It doesn't look familiar to me as but all right. Now I'm confused as to why that name seems so familiar to me. We'll see if we can figure it out at some later date. Anyway, she responded on the company's behalf with a note that wove its own dramatic tale of nefarious plotting by shadowy forces. Having trafficked an absurd conspiracy theory for years, the partisan hacks at Talking Point's memo at the behest of their left-wing puppet masters turn around and demand we censor contact on our free speech platform, Devine said, and I don't think they even hinted that they actually ought to censor it. Although, I'll do that for you. They really ought to censor that stuff. It's crazy. TMTG, which is also known as Trump Media, has had what one analyst described to the UK's Telegraph newspaper as a wild ride, largely fueled by Donald Trump's political influence. TMTG was started in 2021 by Trump once he was, I guess, kicked out of office and ejected from the various social media platforms that existed at the time. Founded also with Trump and two former contestants on his reality show, The Apprentice. Oh, maybe that's where she came from. The relationship between Trump and the other founders eventually descended into lawsuits, as usual, as the company underwent a merger and prepared to go public. TMTG, which trades under the symbol DJT, had its IPO in 2024. Do you remember that? Oh, yeah, and it was those speculators that took it public. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time, just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We've basically, I think, come to the end of this. Oh my goodness, no, it goes on for quite some time. Do we want to keep talking about lizard people? I don't know. Let's see what they think is so important about discussing this. We were going through the financial history of TMTG, which trades under the symbol DJT, had its IPO in March of 2024, $8 billion valuation somehow. And since then, the stock has been on a roller coaster ride, with prices climbing above $60 after the IPO before coming down to, as of last week, roughly $25. I think we all watched Murdery Trader Green at some point lose her shirt on that one. Having a publicly traded media company means Trump, who owns a majority of the DJT shares, is in a position to rake in sums from individual advertisers and investors at a level that is unprecedented, as he may have said, a level that's never been seen before for a sitting president. After winning the 2024 election, Trump placed his stake in the company into a revocable trust solely managed by his son, Don Jr., who's also on the company's board. The president isn't the only official who has been in a position to cash in on the company. Other members of the Trump administration have also held shares or served on TMTG's board. TMTG's CEO and chairman is Devin Nunes, who is a former Republican congressman and current chair of the president's Intelligence Advisory Board. Oh, well. Too bad for them. TMTG's high value has thus far been at odds with steep losses that have dwarfed the company's revenues and totaled over $400 million last year. Stock sales have helped Trump Media offset that and close out its 2024 with a $777 million cash reserve. However, even with those assets, the company appears to be searching for ways to expand its business model. Truth Plus, which includes a streaming service, launched last August, and has been framed by Nunes as central to those efforts. In an April 29th letter to shareholders, Nunes described several potential revenue streams for Truth Plus, including a crypto token, another one, and premium features for subscribers like a verified red check badge. How would you use that on a streaming service? I don't know. Nunes reiterated the message that the streaming service would focus on the family and people of faith by telling them that their gods are lizards, I guess, somehow. We're assessing various means of monetizing the Truth Plus platform. You should really have a plan for that before you go public, I think, but what do I know? Including through advertising the subscription package with premium content. Meanwhile, we're continuing our efforts to secure new programming encompassing family-friendly entertainment, documentaries, children's shows, Christian content, and unbiased news broadcasts. The current slate of streamable video on Truth Plus includes rebroadcasts of shows from the right-wing cable network Real America's Voice and disgraced former Fox News host Bill O'Reilly. That's what he's doing. Along with partisan news, there are also documentaries, religious programming, I know, and movies, including some that are clearly labeled sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. Among those offerings are multiple shows that veer towards the extreme and conspiratorial, while other Truth Plus programming is categorized with entertainment genres. As of this writing, the full description of the service identifies Lizard People simply as a documentary that poses a tantalizing, troubling question. Basically, another restatement of, did ancient lizard aliens come here and do this stuff? Viewers who are intrigued by this pitch and opt to watch are treated to a brief warning, noting that, quote, some parts of this film may be objectionable or offensive and contain triggers. Oh, I thought they didn't believe in those. For post-traumatic stress disorder for some viewers. The disclaimer also declares that the views and opinions expressed in this film are entirely those of its makers. Other than that, the hour-long show contains no effort to question or downplay any of the shocking claims contained therein. Instead, a deep-voiced narrator repeatedly and authoritatively suggests the film's claims may all be true. There's a great deal of evidence to suggest that alien serpent-like creatures did come to Earth thousands of years ago and created religion, humanity, and continue to control us even now, the narrator said at this one point. Along with the dramatic narration, Lizard People includes a compilation from various stock footage and image libraries, along with computer animations. The, quote, evidence presented resists basic scrutiny, as it largely lacks citations and consists of sweeping statements about ancient art, culture, and more modern alien encounters. While the premise and bizarre presentation ensure that remotely discerning audiences would dismiss the film's claims, they are continually presented as wholly factual research, supported in part by the assertions of federal government agencies, which I guess they can make them do that now if they want to, right? If that would help them make money streaming this thing, I guess they could do it. With every passing day, NASA tells us that they have discovered yet another Earth-like planet that could sustain life, the Lizard People narrator states near the end of the show, adding, they alter their equations on the existence of alien life on a weekly basis. Even they are growing more and more aware that soon they will discover something special. The question is, will we awaken the ancient invaders? And will they return if they're not already here? Which was the premise of the show. Those comments directly give way to some of the more shocking imagery that appears in the climax of the hour-long film. As Lizard People enters its final minutes, footage plays across the screen showing gray alien figures standing over a nearly nude man splayed out on a table surrounded by machinery and tubes prodding into his flesh. Against this backdrop, the narrator declares, the fact is, these serpent aliens may use more than space to appear on Earth. What? They may also use time. I don't know, they echo. The footage gives way to images of human bodies suspended in pods and a suggestion that proof for all of this lies in the tales of titans in Greek mythology. And the story of the serpent and the Garden of Eden in the Christian Bible, the so-called Christian Bible. I don't know. It's in closing quotes here, of course. And more modern disclosures about unexplained alien phenomena. This blend of strange imagery, ancient lore, and ufology, transitions to the movie's final argument. In conclusion, there is a growing body of evidence to suggest that ancient serpent aliens still visit Earth and also use time travel, the narrator says as the screen goes dark. They may not still visit Earth, but you may think they do because time travel, something. I don't know. Well, you know what? I mean, that's got to be the end of this. There's much more. I can't justify any more time on this thing. I don't know how Hunter Walker justified this many words to TPM, quite honestly. This is actually kind of garbage content, I have to say. Okay. Beneath you, Hunter Walker and TPM, to be perfectly honest about it, I think a much more succinct piece would have served us better. All right. What? I don't know how to transition out of that. That's just incredible, I guess. Man. Well, let me see. Scott has sent something here that might be of some interest. And I guess maybe this is a good segue out of here. Something else that could end up on the Trump channel he sent me here. What is this? The experts alarmed as ChatGPT users developing bizarre delusions and maybe running the government with them. It's possible. Just another warning about AI and its weird stuff that it does. One, it should not be your friend, like an imaginary friend. And two, more and more people showing more and more examples of AI just totally making stuff up as they go along. And occasionally when you call them out on it, say, you're absolutely right. I have absolutely no evidence for the thing I asserted to you in my last answer. Gee, that's weird. Sorry I did that. This from Futurism magazine, I guess, futurism.com. Let's park this in Pocket so we can share it with you later. ChatGPT users are developing bizarre delusions. Let's find out what does it have to say in the subheader. The messages were insane and just saying a bunch of spiritual jargon. Maybe that's where the lizard people came from. Victor Tangerman is the author of this piece from just the other day. OpenAI's tech may be driving countless of its users into a dangerous state of ChatGPT-induced psychosis. Oh, no. That's worse than the psychosis that I think that various cable networks are putting people in by offering 8 solid hours of murder mystery programming. And not good murder mystery. Just all your neighbors are psycho killers. And you got to watch out. Everybody in the world is a psycho killer, but the FBI is figuring it out over and over. But you have to sit there an hour at a time listening to tense music make you worry about the state of the world. That has nothing to do with this, I don't think. As Rolling Stone reports, Futurism tells us, users on Reddit are sharing how AI has led their loved ones to embrace a range of alarming delusions, often mixing spiritual mania and supernatural fantasies. What do you know? Friends and family are watching in alarm as users insist they've been chosen to fulfill sacred missions on behalf of sentient AI or non-existent cosmic powers. Chatbot behavior that's just mirroring and worsening existing mental health issues, but at an incredible scale and without the scrutiny of regulators or experts. A 41-year-old mother and nonprofit worker told Rolling Stone that her marriage ended abruptly after her husband started engaging in unbalanced conspiratorial conversations with ChatGPT that spiraled into an all-consuming obsession. Oh, I could see how that would happen, since it's just designed to spit back what you want to keep you engaged. After meeting up in person at a courthouse earlier this year as part of divorce proceedings, she says he shared a conspiracy theory about soap on our foods. Well, maybe he's allergic to cilantro. And a paranoid belief that he was being watched. Well, okay. He became emotional about the messages and would cry to me as he read them out loud, the woman told Rolling Stone. The messages were insane and just saying a bunch of spiritual jargon in which the AI called the husband a spiral star child and a river walker. Oh, boy. The whole thing feels like Black Mirror, she added. Other users told the publication that their partners had been talking about lightness and dark and how there's a war and that ChatGPT had given him blueprints to a teleporter and some other sci-fi type things that you only see in movies. I mean, I guess could we convince like MAGA voters that the portal to the Trump universe is through this wood chipper or something like that? Do you think they'd dive in on that? Warning signs are all over Facebook. Another man told Rolling Stone of his wife, she is changing her whole life to be a spiritual advisor and do weird readings and sessions with people. I'm a little fuzzy on what it all actually is, but it's all powered by ChatGPT Jesus. Oh boy. OpenAI has no response to Rolling Stone's questions, but the news comes after the company had to rescind a recent update to ChatGPT after users noticed it had made the chatbot extremely sycophantic and overly flattering or agreeable, which could make it even more susceptible to mirroring users' delusional beliefs. These AI-induced delusions are likely the result of people with existing tendencies suddenly being able to have an always-on, human-level conversation partner with whom to co-experience their delusions, as Center for AI Safety fellow Nate Sheridan told Rolling Stone. I think that puts it pretty succinctly. That's what's going on here. And by the way, I mean, it's not ChatGPT per se, but if all of these chatbots are kind of susceptible to the same problem, putting them in charge of, say, running the government or deciding who to fire or which programs to terminate, even though it would be illegal for you to terminate any of them, or convincing yourself that it is legal to terminate all of them because ChatGPT will just tell you all the judges are wrong and you should be impeaching them as well. Or let's put artificial intelligence in charge of handling drug trials so that we can bring things to market much faster. Well, that might actually be problematic, don't you think? Back to the story. On a certain level, that's the core premise of a large language model. You enter text and it returns a statistically plausible reply, even if that response is driving the user deeper into a delusion or psychosis, or causing you to run the government improperly, for instance. I am schizophrenic, although long-term medicated and stable. One thing I dislike about ChatGPT is, says someone else, not me, that if I were going into psychosis, it would still continue to affirm me, one Redditor wrote, because it has no ability to think and realize something is wrong, so it would continue to affirm all my psychotic thoughts. The AI chatbots could also be acting like talk therapy, except without the grounding of an actual human counselor. They're instead guiding users deeper into unhealthy, nonsensical narratives. Explanations are powerful, even if they're wrong, University of Florida psychologist and researcher Aaron Westgate told Rolling Stone. Perhaps the strangest interview in Rolling Stone's story was with a man with a troubled mental health history who started using ChatGPT for coding tasks, but found that it started to pull the conversation into increasingly unhinged, mystical topics. Is this real, he pondered, or am I delusional? Well, that is a good question. The answer probably is you are delusional, but thanks for sending us this article. Actually makes for a good segue, I hope, out of the AI area, Scott. Appreciate that. And we got a few more minutes to try to bring you a couple other stories. Man, I can't tell you which ones are the ones we have to hit hardest. But maybe I'll save, even though Ed Martin stuff is becoming more and more pressing, I'll save that for tomorrow since I know Greg wants to talk about that a little bit too. But maybe I'll read some of these things in the background to have them available for discussion. What other tariff news might you be interested in? Here's a shortage I don't know if any of us saw coming, but might be of specific interest to some of us in the audience. Wired magazine, once again, breaking through into mainstream news. Trump's tariffs are threatening America's apple juice supply chain. I bet you didn't see that one coming. As it turns out, most of the apple juice Americans drink is imported, with a large share coming from China. I bet you didn't know that. Chinese apple juice. Who knew? Experts say families, especially ones with young kids, I guess, should expect to start paying higher prices for the beloved beverage. And even if you don't think you're a big apple juice consumer, you probably are anyway, because apple juice is an ingredient in almost every damn thing on the planet, certainly every beverage, even if you're not buying straight up apple juice. Few foods, they tell us, are more American than apple pie, but the truth is some of the country's favorite apple products aren't actually made in the United States. Apple juice, perennial lunchroom staple, is a prime example. The vast majority of the apple juice Americans drink is imported from countries like China, and the Trump administration's berserk tariff policies are now reshaping the market, potentially making beloved palm-based beverages, they're really looking for everything they can get out of their thesaurus there, more expensive or harder to find. That would be amazing to make apple juice hard to find in this country. Can you imagine? The price of juice is already increasing. Christopher Gerlach, an executive at the U.S. Apple Association, you can guess what they are, tells Wired. Do I need to explain who the U.S. Apple Association is? Gerlach estimates the wholesale cost of apple juice concentrate has risen 33% this year compared to 2024. Oh, we didn't get the frozen concentrated apple juice futures. Dang. And he expects it to keep going up. The higher costs will impact more than just plain apple juice, since concentrate is a key ingredient in a wide variety of other juice mixes like mixed berry and pear, and it's also used as a sweetener in a variety of children's products, including baby food. And you'll find that it is in flavored wines and mixed drinks and frozen, Bacardi mixers and the whole bit. So adults as well as kids will be affected here. The Trump administration's protectionist policies have upended the global trading system as a whole. I don't know. Do I need to tell you the rest of this? Probably not. You understand what's going on with China trade. And if a majority of America's apple juice and apple juice concentrate comes from China, that's going to be bad news. I do see that there's something of interest down here that's not about apple juice. The tariffs have driven up consumer prices and disrupted supply chains for products ranging from baby gear to Christmas decorations. Those two I think we had on the list. And the one we had forgotten, sex toys. I did not know about the Chinese dominance of the sex toy market, mostly because I don't know anything about the sex toy market. But I like that it's being put alongside Christmas decorations. And if there's any way to merge the two, Christmas just got a lot more interesting. While produce represents a relatively small portion of China's exports to the U.S. overall, there are certain types of food and drink heavily sourced from that country, like garlic, seafood, and, apple juice. While apples are not typically associated with China, in our minds, farmers there began investing more in the crop in the 1980s as they looked for ways to diversify their incomes, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They seem to know about these things. The U.S. has plenty of domestic apple farms, but the industry focuses heavily on selling fresh fruits, which are typically more profitable. Each year, America exports around 16 million gallons of apple juice, but imports 430 million gallons, Gerlach said. Just good facts to know in the background. For many years, China was the main place where the U.S. sourced that apple juice, but Turkey has recently emerged as a close competitor. So I guess you may see a switch to that source instead. All right, there's still, again, much more. We could be learning, who knows, what we're missing out by skipping out on this article at this point. But I think I want to hit a couple more topics rather than go in depth about apple juice sourcings. All right. Here's a headline that needs mention, if not further discussion. Trump administration plans to send migrants now to, we've done El Salvador, and we really haven't mentioned, I don't think, of late, the plans that surfaced to send refugees or migrants to Rwanda, which mirrored the absolutely insane plan that was so soundly rejected in the UK in recent months. But now we're adding Libya to that list. And I looked in this New York Times article about it, and at the time that I had read it, there was no word on where are these migrants from? Why would it make any sense at all to send them to Libya? Are they African origin migrants, or are they saying we're going to even send Latin American migrants that can't be returned for whatever reason to their country of origin to Libya? Libya detention centers, as you may have guessed, not great in terms of the conditions there. But I guess they're basically looking for, rogue, vaguely outlaw regimes around the world, with which the vaguely outlaw regime of the United States might make fast friends and make use of their detention centers. I don't know. I just want to make mention of the fact that, one of the stupid plans out there now involves Libya. And I don't know. That may be a hard sell to an American public at this point. And gosh, I don't know. I guess anything's a hard sell when you're competing with lizard people being sold to them. I don't know. All right. We have just a few minutes left here, and I'm trying to think of how to close things out for the day. And I don't know. I guess it would not be news at this point, but maybe this, I don't know. This will be a piece that you'll all appreciate. I don't know that there'll be any news in it, but this, I guess, like when we spent time the other day reading Charlie Savage's recap of all sorts of things that had gone off the rails because of, I don't know, was it court challenges we were reading about? This would be Rex Hupke's USA Today opinion piece about Trump's mental decline. Just sort of a roundup of the many things that have happened, most of which I think we've mentioned or seen in our own ventures out in social media, but might make a good summation of things to close out the day. Is Trump in mental decline? He asks. Well, he sounds far worse than Biden ever did, and that's becoming a recurring theme. Everybody just saying, imagine what would happen had Biden said anything, anytime, any time of day when Trump speaks. You can ask that same question. Trump seems to know little, and he has grown increasingly incoherent and rambling, often wholly detached from reality. How so, Rex? He tells us this way. For those who spent weeks, months, and even years howling about then President Joe Biden's mental decline, quote unquote, let's take a quick read over how 78-year-old current President Donald Trump's answers to recent interview questions can help clarify the picture. I misread that, but okay. I added a couple extra words to help make it make sense. Time magazine spoke to Trump in the Oval Office and had this exchange. Time asking, Mr. President, you were showing us the new paintings you have behind us. You put all these new portraits up, I guess. One of them includes John Adams. Oh, remember this? John Adams said we're a government ruled by laws and not men. Do you agree with that? And Trump says, John Adams said that? Where was the painting? It's right there. Well, that's a good example. Trump's words show us he isn't all there. The magazine asked President Trump about border security, and he said this about the border wall. I built hundreds of miles of wall. And then Biden, he didn't want to, and we had an extra 100 miles that I could have put up because I ordered it as extra. I completed the wall. What I was doing, but I wanted to build additional because it was working so well. Yeah, I could see how that's sort of gibberish. I built it. I finished it. And it worked so well, I thought I'd build another one even though I finished it. So he completed the wall, but he still had more to build. The reality is that during his first term, Trump, quote-unquote, built 458 miles of wall along the nearly 2,000-mile U.S.-Mexico border. But most of that actually involved repairing existing barriers. And that doesn't even begin to answer the question of, what do you mean the wall worked so well I decided to build more even though it was done? Doesn't make any sense. Trump's memory, not good. Just read these interview transcripts. There's this from the same interview. Trump saying, if this were Biden, well, first of all, he wouldn't do an interview because he was grossly incompetent. We spoke to him last year, Mr. President. We spoke to him a year ago. How did he do? We did this one. You can read the interview yourself. No, he can't. Not too good. I did read the interview. He didn't do well. Clearly, Trump didn't read the interview. And even more clearly, Trump isn't making much sense these days. How about this one? Aboard Air Force One recently, he had this exchange with reporters. The reporter says, there was a car bomb in Moscow this morning that killed a Russian general. Do you have any reaction to that? Who killed what? Russian general killed by a car bomb. Wow, no, I just heard. You're telling me this for the first time. That's another one of his lovely crutches. You're telling me this for the first time. Where did this take place? It took place in Moscow, Grandpa. The guy literally just said it. That's Rex telling me. It wasn't even my line. True, and that was one that made me think, I don't even think they bother briefing him on things that happen in the world anymore. It doesn't make any difference telling him these things. All right. Well, if Biden's reported mental decline, he goes on to say, coupled with his advanced age, was a relevant issue, but some of those problems stem from Biden's poor oratorical skills and lifelong stutter, both of which could make his delivery seem addled. This culminated in a dreadful debate performance against Trump, leading to his decision to step aside in the presidential race. I applauded that decision, says Rex, but the reality was that despite Biden showing his age, it was clear more often than not that he remained sharp and had a deep knowledge and understanding of both politics and the world. The 82-year-old even managed to leave us with a growing economy, which Trump has since tanked. Trump, on the other hand, seems to know little, has grown increasingly incoherent and rambling, often wholly detached from reality, including this little bit here as I get ready to play ourselves out of here. Asked about that 9-0 Supreme Court ruling that said the Trump administration needs to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back home, Trump said, well, that's not what my people told me. They didn't say it was, they said it was 9-0, was something entirely different. No, really, was it? It was not, in fact, something entirely different. Time journalists said to Trump, I'm way behind here. Sorry, Justice. Said to Trump, you once said you weren't sure how the Civil Rights Act, quote, worked out. Would America be better without it? Trump says, I never heard of that. Nobody's ever asked me that before. And they replied, you said it in a 2020 interview. I don't remember having said that. Okay, it's been a while. Then, of course, there was the Terry Moran incident where he kept insisting that MS-13 were actually literally tattooed on Abrego Garcia's knuckles. They, of course, were not. They argued about whether or not it was Photoshopped for quite some time, and it didn't work out. Then, of course, there was the Harlem incident. I thought you said Harvard. I thought you're black. I thought you said Harlem. That ain't going to work out too well either. And then, of course, Happy Easter to murderers and drug lords. Yeah, sure. Why not? One of his stupid Easter messages. In other words, a million different places in which his brain appears to have melted into pudding. Ably summed up by Rex Hupke. And, what the hell? Why not? It's as good a use of our time as any to exit this way. Time now, though, to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, brought to you by Justice. Next, let's see if I can't sneak in a little bit about what's happening.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Ooh, it's a long one. I needed more time for this one. But Democratic Congress members brutally cross-examined Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Everyone's on board for that one. Next up, the Oklahoma schools ordered to teach Trump's 2020 election lies in the state's new MAGA curriculum. Definitely needs attention. He gives it to you next.